Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a series we probably all love. This random illogic so often, and the obvious cheating actually makes the series all the better.
He's so busy bragging he's not paying any attention to my moves. Maybe I can set a little trap of my own.
It was always abnormally fun to watch the anime, take my poor birthday money and immediately run to the gas station and buy some boosters. Or just play the game. Now the nostalgia kicks in. Or just throwing cards in elementary school, you know, stuff like that. In the anime, one had quite quickly made friends with the individual characters. Yugi, who is overly effeminate and can then stand his ground in the end. Joey, who always had something to say against everyone. Tristan, who always had something to say against Joey. Kaiba, who thinks no one is better than himself and always had something to say against Joey. And Tia. The mystery between Yami Yugi and Atem was never really in the center. Rather, other adventures were pursued, like avenge grandfather after his heart attack when he lost a duel, free grandfather from the card, win the big Battle City tournament and thereby get... was there any prize money at all? Grandpa needs his coke! I'm not addicted, Yugi! In any case, it was just something that was done on the side. But I try to show you now that there's probably much more behind the mystery. Namely, the power of the Pharaoh is not really a power of a Pharaoh. This power is much more. This is in fact a story of how Atem became from Pharaoh to God. Which is actually quite wrong, because Atem was God all along. It's no coincidence that our Egyptian friend is called Atemu or Atem, just like the most powerful god in Egyptian mythology. The most powerful god from all mythologies is of course Mr. Popo. Atemu was derived here from Atum, or rather it's another version of this name. He was called among other things also Atum, Atemu, Tem or Temu. In the course of history there were always other names. But let's take a closer look to the god. His name means something like universe. After all, the god is everything that exists, and everything that exists is also Atum.
Wow.
He's the light god, he's the king who claims the entire kingship for himself. That's why the royal heritage is called Throne of Atemu. By the hand of Atum, storms and tempests were dispelled. In later dynasties, he's equated with Re, who in turn is equated with Ra, with whom he merged in the later history of Egypt. The obelisk is a cult object of Re and thus one of the most important, if not the most important symbolism of all. Another important symbolism of Re is in any case also the Horus Eye. And if we are already with symbols, let's have a look to the Benben, which is a pyramid-shaped stone. This is essential for the cult of Atum because Atum touched the earth here for the first time. But also a god needs family. There we have for example his grandson Osiris. Likewise, gods also need entertainment. Some organizes a tournament where almost all universes have to fight against each other. He may have done that too, I don't know. In any case, one great characteristic of his was that he was an absolute game child. He was not only master of games, but he also had fun with his games. Besides, such a god also has his interests. Namely, he was fascinated by the pharaohs. So now let's get to the anime and connect one thing and another. Let's first look at the whole obvious. So what you could guess directly out of the head. Ra or Re later merged with Atem, which, as we all know, is Ra's special ability in Yu-Gi-Oh! That's because it's an allusion to the permanent back and forth fusion with Marek. And that's why Ra was the most powerful god card in the anime. After all, Ra was a part of Atum. The obelisk, of course, is also a clear allusion to Obelisk the Tormentor. So is his grandson Osiris, or as we know him in our translation, Slifer. For this reason, Yugi had him first. As a family member, he was of course the closest to him. I think everyone can think of the eye. This is on 6 of the 7 Millennium objects and is a symbol of Re and thus one of Atum. Just like the Benben, should also be clear. Here, of course, the Millennium Puzzle is meant. Nothing is better suited for this than to make a pyramid with the Eye of Horus out of a puzzle, so that Atem can find his way back to Earth. The power of the Pharaoh is Atem's royal dignity. He's therefore also considered the strongest and most powerful Pharaoh because he has this power. Only just he has sealed this himself. Why? We'll get to that in a moment. For now, we come a little to the Dark Side of Dimensions movie. There they have made the whole thing a little more obvious. Here we have Joey, who was brought into another dimension by the power of the planner. Everything seemed helpless, but then Atem came along and pulled him out. If he was a simple Pharaoh who just went back to his time at the end of Yu-Gi-Oh! Classic, the whole thing wouldn't be possible at all. Atem is not even in the puzzle anymore, and with the hand of the Atem one can drive away a whole storm, just like Atemu did in the movie. The most obvious and epic thing: the appearance of the Light God in the Radiant Light. In addition, we must talk very briefly about the planner. These get, if Atem leaves the Earth, the power to change everything. No matter if it's anything on Earth, people from Earth, or anything else. The universe itself, simply everything. But why? About such an ability, there is nothing at all in Egyptian mythology. However, it can be assumed that the cube, meaning the 8th millennium object, houses a part of Atem's infinite power. This cube would have been a backup plan for Atem if anything had gone wrong, and so that people could still trust in his power. So if he had lost in the duel against Marek and was banished to the Shadow Realm, this cube could make sure that Marek would get punched in the mouth in the most violent way. When he left the second time, he took the power of the planner with him. Because why a backup plan if he is still there himself? And now it gets a little more complicated. So, minimally. To awaken the power of the Pharaoh, or more the power of Atem in Yu-Gi-Oh!, you have to first have all 3 god cards, the Millennium Puzzle and the Stone Tablet. Second, find the name of the Pharaoh hidden somewhere in the past. Third, put all the 7 Millennium items in the Stone Tablet and win the last game. Let's go through each step in a little more detail. The first 3 things needed will bring Atem back to the past. The Stone Tablet is the door, the 3 god cards are the key, and Atem's soul in the Millennium's puzzle passes through after opening the door to continue with his game. The second thing he has to do is find his name again to complete the chapter. Of course, the whole thing is not set up too easily, otherwise it would be boring. If he then has the name, he knows who he is again, has thus played through the level and can return to the present. With the last and third thing, his final begins. With the 7 Millennium items in the Stone Tablet, he can separate himself from Yugi's body to take the final game and thus the final test. If he has managed to raise his protege so that he wins against him, that Atem finally loses in a game in a fair way, he's free again. If Yugi doesn't make it, Atem stays with him. But why would he do that? Quite simple, Atem is just a play child. He's looking for the greatest challenge there is. How else can you satisfy a gambling addiction in an all-powerful being when he can do everything and knows everything? Then where's the thrill that he loves so much? It's sort of like he's a game master in a game. It's cool at first, but over the time it's get pretty boring, and that's where Trick 17 came in. To finally satisfy his gambling addiction, he came up with this little game. He was a Pharaoh, so the person he likes so much, put in a few insiders while you gamble, erased his memory, and let's go! Let's see how good he really is. It was a great experience. After Yu-Gi-Oh! Classic, he got his powers back, which you not only saw in the Dark Side of Dimensions movie. He saved Joey even though his spirit shouldn't even be there anymore. He came back as a light figure since he is the light god. And to continue having some fun, he came back at the beginning of GX again, or rather, several times. But not Yugimoto, but Atem, which theoretically would not be possible as a normal Pharaoh from his time. Although the German voice actor of Muto was taken, this should have been wrong, because according to Salomon, Yugi has been traveling for a long time and Yugimoto is 10 centimeters shorter than Jaden and not a head taller. Choosing Atem's or Yugi's voice actor was relatively difficult here, because the Japanese voice actor simply spoke both of them and juggled the voice between exactly the two in this situation. By chance, he came along on the day of the enrollment, runs by chance against Jaden and gave Jaden the winged Kuribo.
ラッキーカードだ。こいつが君のところへ行きたがっている。
In the time of the Duel Academy, Jaden grew into a strong adult with the help of the winged Kuribo. So then it was time. Atem brings Jaden to the exhibition of Yugi's legendary deck with the winged Kuribo, which sends him back in time to duel Yugi when he didn't know he was Atem.
さあ、始めようか。僕たちの 本当の卒業デュエルを。
During the entire duel, time stood still, which Yugi also found strange. But of course, this is something that one deck alone can't do. Would be wild if the deck could send someone back in time and stop time there. Of course, it was nothing but the power of Atem. With Jaden, he had raised a new challenge over the 3 years, and all that again just to send him back to the Atem who has yet to unlock his memory and have his fun with him. Just before the duel, Jaden was still in the Duel Academy. After the duel, Jaden was suddenly in the desert and no one has heard from him in the entire history of Yu-Gi-Oh! In the later series like 5Ds or even later, never a word was said about Jaden. Just like in the movie Bonds Beyond Time, where Yusei knows Yugi and his legend, but knows nothing at all about Jaden, as if he had disappeared from the face of the earth. Is it perhaps because Atem proved him worthy just like Kaiba in the Dark Side of Dimensions and thus brought him to himself? Unfortunately, we will never know. But if Atem wasn't so playful and also not so powerful, then he certainly wouldn't be the king of the game.